Online dating felt like a game at first, an endless buffet of profiles, all promising something new, exciting, or at least different from my usual routine. My friends had been nagging me for months to try it, insisting it was the only way to meet someone in the modern world. I was skeptical, but one boring Tuesday night, curiosity got the better of me. Swipe left, swipe left, swipe right. Her name was Lily. She had an easy smile in her pictures, the kind that made you believe she could light up any room she walked into. Her bio was short: coffee addict, bookworm, and always down for an adventure. Something about her felt authentic. We matched within minutes. Her first message was clever, a witty comment about my love for hiking, which I had casually mentioned in my profile. Before I knew it, we were exchanging messages that turned into paragraphs. She loved obscure horror movies, the kind no one else seemed to appreciate. She even mentioned a small indie film I adored but thought no one else had ever heard of. It felt too good to be true. After a week of texting, we decided to meet. It was her idea. "Why waste time when we already know we get along?" she'd said. Her confidence was magnetic. She suggested a small coffee shop downtown, one I'd never been to before, but had heard about. A quiet, tucked-away place perfect for a first meeting. The day of the date, I couldn't shake the strange feeling in my stomach. It wasn't nerves exactly. It was more like a nagging thought at the back of my mind that I couldn't quite pin down. Maybe it was because I'd never met anyone from an app before. Or maybe it was because I realized how little I actually knew about her. Still, I convinced myself I was overthinking it. Lily had been nothing but kind, funny, and engaging in our chats. I reminded myself that this was what I wanted, to meet someone who made me feel alive again. That evening, I arrived 10 minutes early, the warm glow of the coffee shop beckoning me inside. The place was cozy, with wooden tables and fairy lights strung along the walls. I picked a table near the corner, where I could see both the entrance and the barista station. As I waited, I scrolled through our messages, smiling at our inside jokes and shared quirks. The time ticked by. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. No Lily. I was about to text. "For a few days now," she said, her voice trembling. At first I thought it was just a coincidence. I'd see him at the grocery store, then at the gas station, even outside my apartment once. But today, she trailed off, her eyes wide with fear. "What happened today?" I pressed. "I saw him standing outside my building this morning, just staring up at my window. He didn't even try to hide. When I left for work, he followed me all the way to the train station. I thought I lost him there. But now..." She glanced toward the door again. "I think he's here." My heart raced as I tried to process what she was saying. "Lily, are you sure? Maybe it's just... I'm not imagining it," she snapped, her voice sharper now. "I know what I saw." Before I could respond, the bell above the door jingled, and I felt the air in the room shift. Someone had walked in. I didn't turn immediately, but I saw Lily's reaction. Her body tensed, her eyes fixed on the new arrival. Slowly, I turned my head, trying to appear casual. The man was unremarkable at first glance. Mid-30s, average build, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, but there was something about him that set my nerves on edge. He didn't head to the counter or look for a seat. Instead, he stood by the door, scanning the room in a way that felt deliberate. When his eyes landed on our table, I saw the faintest hint of a smirk cross his lips. "Is that him?" I whispered. Lily nodded, her face drained of color. That's him. Okay, I said, trying to stay calm. We need to call someone. The police. No, she interrupted. He hasn't done anything. They won't take me seriously. I wanted to argue, but the fear in her eyes stopped me. Instead, I said, then let's leave. Together? We'll go somewhere public, somewhere safe. She hesitated, glancing at the man again. He hadn't moved from his spot by the door, but his gaze never left our table. Okay, she finally agreed. We stood up, trying to act normal as we gathered our things. My mind raced, formulating a plan. The coffee shop had a back exit, one I'd noticed when I arrived. We need to stick to crowded areas, I said as we stepped outside, the chill of the night air biting at our skin. If we can make it to the main street. I didn't get to finish. A shadow moved at the edge of the alley, and before I could react, the man stepped into view, blocking our path. His hood was down now, revealing a face that was eerily calm, almost blank except for his eyes. They were cold, unfeeling, and fixed on Lily. Leave her alone, I said, stepping in front of her. My voice was steady, but inside, I was shaking. The man tilted his head, a faint smirk playing at his lips. You don't understand, he said, his voice low and gravelly. I'm not here for you. She's not going anywhere with you. I shot back, my fists clenching. He took a step closer, and instinctively, I reached for the nearest object, a rusty pipe leaning against the alley wall. Stay back, I warned, raising it. The man stopped, his smirk fading. You don't know what she's done, he said, his gaze shifting to Lily. Don't listen to him, Lily cried from behind me. He's lying. But something in his eyes, in the way he spoke, made me hesitate. What is he talking about? I asked, glancing back at her. Lily's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. Not just of the man, but of something else. Tell him, Lily, the man said, his voice dripping with menace. Tell him who you really are. Don't, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Don't believe him. He's trying to confuse you. Enough, I shouted, my head spinning. Someone needs to tell me what's going on right now. The man exhaled sharply, his calm demeanor cracking. She's not who she says she is, he said, his voice rising. She's been doing this for months, luring people in, meeting them, and then they disappear. Look it up if you don't believe me. Her name isn't even online dating. What could possibly go wrong, right? At least that's what I thought when I first downloaded the app. I was tired of seeing all my friends finding someone special while I stayed stuck in the same old routine. So one Friday evening, with nothing better to do, I decided to give it a shot. Little did I know that simple swipe would change my life forever. The app was easy enough to use. Pictures, bios, some witty one-liners, everyone trying to showcase their best selves. After a few minutes of scrolling, I saw her profile. Maya, her name read, paired with a smile that felt both warm and inviting, yet strangely haunting. Her bio was simple. Looking for a real connection. Loves art, coffee, and midnight walks. Something about her drew me in, like a moth to a flame. We matched almost instantly, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. Her messages were quick, engaging, and surprisingly personal. She seemed to know just the right things to say to keep me hooked. It was like she could read my mind, pulling out thoughts I hadn't even put into words yet. Within a day, it felt like we'd known each other for years. But there were small things, tiny, almost imperceptible details that began to tug at the edges of my mind. Her profile picture seemed off, like it was slightly blurred, almost as if it were a screenshot of something. When I asked her for more photos, she always had a reason not to send them. Her social media accounts? Non-existent. "I prefer to stay offline," she said. At the time, I brushed it off. After all, not everyone lives their life online. She suggested meeting in person just 3 days after we matched. "There's this amazing little cafe downtown," she said. "Perfect for a first date." Her enthusiasm was infectious and I couldn't say no. But as the hours ticked closer to our meeting, a sense of unease began to creep in. I couldn't explain it. Just this nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. It wasn't fear, exactly, but it wasn't excitement either. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. What could possibly go wrong? We stepped out into the cool night, the street lights casting long, eerie shadows on the pavement. Maya led the way, her steps light and purposeful, as if she knew exactly where she was going. I followed, trying to make small talk, but she grew quieter with each passing block. At one point, she stopped abruptly in front of an old abandoned building. The windows were boarded up, and graffiti covered the walls. "This used to be a gallery," she said, her voice distant. "I used to come here all the time, before it closed." Her tone sent a chill down my spine. "It looks creepy now," I said, trying to lighten the mood. She turned to me slowly, her face partially hidden in shadow. "Sometimes things that look abandoned aren't really empty," she said, her voice almost a whisper. I laughed nervously, unsure of what to say. But before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it briefly, her expression darkening. "I have to go," she said abruptly, her earlier charm replaced by a cold urgency. "Go? Is everything okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "Yeah," she replied, her voice flat. "It's just something came up. I'll text you." Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in front of the eerie building. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The night air felt heavier now, colder. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I finally decided to head home, I glanced back one last time and froze. In the window of the abandoned gallery, barely visible behind the cracked glass, I saw a shadow. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't Maya's. It was something else, something that shouldn't have been there. I hurried back to my car, my heart racing. When I got home, I checked my phone, half expecting a text from Maya explaining everything. But there was nothing. And when I opened the app to message her, her profile was gone, completely erased, as if she'd never existed. That night I couldn't sleep. "You weren't supposed to leave," she said, her voice layered with something inhuman, as if multiple people were speaking at once. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. What? What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, her expression almost pitying. "I chose you because you're alone. You're forgotten. No one would miss you." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "That's not true," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, but it is," she replied, taking another step closer. "You're just like the others, lost, desperate for connection. And now, you're mine." Before I could react, the shadows around her seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing like living things. They reached out toward me, cold and suffocating, pulling me closer to her. Desperation took over, and I swung my flashlight wildly. The beam cutting through the darkness. For a brief moment, the light seemed to weaken her, causing her to recoil. Taking advantage of the moment, I turned and ran, my feet barely touching the ground as I sprinted toward the exit. Behind me, I heard her voice echo through the building, filled with rage. "You can't run from me. You belong to the darkness now." I burst out of the gallery, collapsing onto the pavement outside. My chest heaved as I struggled to catch my breath. When I looked back, the door was shut tight, as if it had never been opened. The humming was gone, replaced by the eerie silence of the night. Shaking, I got into my car and drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. I didn't stop until I was safely inside my apartment, every lock bolted and every light turned on. But even in the safety of my home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every shadow seemed to move. Every faint noise set my nerves on edge. And then, just as I was beginning to calm down, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was a single line of text. "You can't escape the shadows, Alex. I'll see you soon." The phone slipped from my hands, the screen going dark. My nightmare was far from over. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. She screamed, a sound so piercing it felt like it could shatter the walls. The shadows recoiled, writhing and twisting as if in pain. "No," she shrieked. "You can't escape me." But I kept the light on her, forcing her to retreat further into the darkness. "You don't own me," I shouted. "You're nothing but a shadow." With one final agonized cry, she disappeared, the shadows dissolving into nothingness. The room felt lighter, the oppressive air lifting as if a weight had been removed. I stood there, shaking and drenched in sweat, but alive. I don't know how long I stayed in that spot, staring at the now empty room. But when I finally left, the streets outside felt brighter, the air crisper. In the days that followed, I slowly started to rebuild my life. I deleted every dating app from my phone and began reconnecting with friends and family. I realized how much I'd isolated myself and how easy it had been for something like Maya to prey on that loneliness. If there's one thing I've learned from this nightmare, it's this: darkness thrives where there is isolation and fear. When we let ourselves become disconnected, we become vulnerable. Not just to people like Maya, but to our own inner demons. So, to anyone hearing this, I have one piece of advice. Don't let loneliness consume you. Stay connected, stay grounded, and most importantly, never trust the shadows. They may be hiding more than you could ever imagine. As for me, I still don't know exactly what Maya was or why she chose me. But I do know one thing. I survived, and I'll never let myself fall into the darkness again.